So just I thought I will discuss about the various techniques that we need to follow whenever we have to assess a subject. Okay. So generally, our assessment, as you all are aware, is only to find out if the children are in a position to get the best out of what we teach. So our aim is to just to see to it that the amount of input that you have to be conveyed to them has to be conveyed in the right sense, and that is also taken by them in the right way, and it is going to be really a useful session. That is the purpose of this assessment. So what do you mean by an assessment? It is nothing but a systematic basis for making some inferences about the learning and development of students. So whenever we pose questions to them, relatively, we first teach them. We tell them that this is it. And then we will ask them if they have analyzed what we have given. And it is a process of just defining, selecting, designing, collecting, analyzing, interpreting, anything you can say. Using information to increase the students' learning and development skills. So we generally make assessments or do assessments only to see to it that the children are benefited out of what is being conducted in various sessions. Now, how does it differ from evaluation? So there are these are two different terms, assessment, evaluation. What is assessment? Assessment is a feedback from the students. When I teach something and I ask questions, I get a feedback from them of what they have learned. Whereas evaluation uses the methods and measures to judge the students' learning capacity. So when I teach, say for instance, if I'm going to teach AP, when I want to assess, I don't mean to say I will give you questions on how to solve questions in AP. I would only ask if the child has understood what is an AP, what is the purpose of learning AP, how does it help us in day-to-day life, and things like that. So assessment is just going to be a feedback from the children's side or from the student's side to the instructor about their learning. Whereas an evaluation, it to judge actually what it is. I want to evaluate a student's capacity means I will pose so many questions to the student. And the student should be in a position to evaluate and predict some results. So assessment is just a feedback from the students to the instructor. Whereas evaluation uses methods and measures to judge the students' learning and understanding of the material. So they need to understand what is being taught, and we evaluate or we give them some credits in the form of marks or whatever be it, to tell them that you have understood this and this is it, that is it, and things like that. So the purpose of this assessment is only to make the person who is teaching to understand how much he or she has reached the students. And the purpose of evaluation is nothing but various techniques that is being used to understand the learning and understanding level for grading and reporting. I must be in a position to evaluate and report. I must say, assessing means I would say, okay, it is just a feedback. I may go to Ms. Aarti, I may go to Ms. Ramya, and I may ask them, how do you feel about this, all these 10 sessions? In that way, I'm assessing both your understanding feedback, and at the same time, I'm also trying to understand in what way I have reached you. Whereas an evaluation is nothing but giving you, posing some questions, trying to propose some grades and report it. Evaluation is nothing but like which we do to children. Conduct a test, a unit test, an exam, or anything of that sort, grade them and give a report about that thing to the person who needs it. So that is what is making the difference between this assessment and evaluation. So assessment is nothing but a feedback from the students to the instructor, whereas evaluation is for the purpose of grading and reporting to know the understanding and students' learning capacity. So it makes a huge difference, and we will be in a position to give them some understanding and make them realize that it is very essential to learn the concept in a very useful manner. Unless until I go to a child to say that I'm going to test you, the child will not be ready to read. If I am telling I'm not conducting any test, automatically the child will think, fine, there is no test. Why should I prepare? And they will not do. That is why we make use of all these techniques like understanding and telling them, I'm going to grade you. I'm going to give internal marks. Internal marks, we are telling children, see, I am conducting a paper pen test. I'm going to see a portfolio. I'm going to see your lab activity. I'm going to see your what is that regularity in your submissions. When I give an assignment, if you are going to submit it regularly, I will be giving a mark for regularity. If you are going to be irregular, you will lose mark for that regularity. The child will be able to understand the seriousness of their preparations. So in a way, by assessing, we are trying to bring the child into a sort of discipline also. And the child, we are making the child realize that he should be disciplined in life. He should be in a position to understand that certain things are to be done within the time span. If I'm going to tell, I'm going to take the notebooks in another 10 days. That by the time the notebook comes, it would be some 15-20 days. So if you are going to tell the child, I'm giving marks for regularity, for your punctuality, only then the child will realize, okay, if we don't give, Mrs. unnecessarily going to cut marks. And let us keep telling children that anyway you are going to submit it on time so that you don't lose mark for regularity. So that way we are also streaming the child to be disciplined. So in a way, this assessment is going to make the child disciplined also. Life-led discipline is essential right from childbirth. Childhood, we can make the child understand. So what are the objectives of these assessments? To understand the effectiveness of teaching learning. As I told you, I must also, or a maths teacher, when I'm teaching, only if my child does that well, I am a good teacher. In a way, I am assessing myself. I am going to test my effectiveness of teaching. I am going to say, I have reached my child only by the performance of the child. See, nammal assess pandrathu eppadi? The best way of assessing a teacher is to speak to a child. The child should be able to say that the teacher has done a good job. There is no other technique to assess a teacher. That child should be happy that they have understood something from the teacher. So to understand the effectiveness of teaching learning, to check the level of understanding of the students, correct? So நம்ம teach பண்றது நம்ம எப்படி check பண்ணுவோம்? நம்ம கிட்ட okay, of course, ஒரு classல 40 பேர் இருந்தா 40 பேரும் they cannot get a full mark. At least அந்த average ஒன்னு பார்க்கும்போது the decent இருந்தாதான் we have achieved something. And the average dip ஆச்சுனா, it means we have not done a good job. The set may be very poor. There are umpteen reasons, many number of reasons for their performances to be the worst. But still, nammalku or satisfaction, when will we get? We will get that satisfaction only when the child does something relatively good. Appadi ella perfect centum vaangida mudiyadhu illaya. At least or 40 பேர் இருக்கிற classல, if you are going to see some 5 or 6 centums, I have reached my goal. I have reached my goal. The goal which was set was reached. அப்படின்ற ஒரு satisfaction will have. So to understand the effectiveness of the teaching learning process first, after to check the level of understanding of the students. So assessments for identifying the weak areas of students. Supposing or evaluation பண்றோம். Okay, we are giving a question. And the question supposing you take a question where I'm asking you to find out the area of a triangle or a rectangle, whatever it is. First the child should understand the formula, identify the formula. Apra he has to apply that formula and substitute the values. Adukapra he has to do computation, that is evaluation. So in the moon part, if the child is going to lag if many children are going to lag a particular spot, then we will understand that spot has to be given more importance. I am able to understand. I don't know how do you people teachers feel. Enakku enna thonuduna, they are able to recognize and recollect the formula. Eludidran first line. அடுத்தது the substitute பண்ணிடுறான். Sometimes I give diameter, they misunderstand that to be radius and do that is all there. Okay, adella petty mistakes which can be identified. கடைசில இந்த calculation வருதுல்ல, அது decimal calculations I am seeing so many missing out. then I am able to understand, okay, the child is not able to do the calculation. So இந்த மாதிரி assessment பண்ணும்போது நம்ம வந்து when we are looking into it, we are able to understand where does the child actually lag. And the lagging part, we should be in a position to emphasize. That's the purpose of this assessment. So as adi evaluation kadayadu, it is only we are assessing the child. We are trying to make the child do something, and we are in a position to understand, and then we will adopt suitable remedies to see that those things are rectified. So assessment is for identifying the weak areas of the students and adopt suitable remediations to measure that and see to it that those spots are removed from their names, to award judicious grades to students and various competencies. So we will also be in a position to be doing justice for the way we teach. So the objective in assessment is to find out the weak areas of the students, adopt suitable remediations or remedial measures to see that those objectives are achieved. So for that, what we need to set a very good question paper. Adu romba important. Chuma kachamuchan, you can't set a paper. You should be in a position to see to it that the child is in a position to do something which is going to be really creating a good justice to the job. So we have to set a question paper. A question paper, what is the purpose of question paper? A question paper tests how well a student can demonstrate what is the knowledge that they have acquired, understanding and skills set out in the specification. So the child should be in the question paper, it should be in such a way that the student should be in a position to demonstrate all the knowledge that they have acquired, the understanding skills, and set out in specification, and all the skills that are set out in proper specifications. At the same time, as and when we develop the question paper, we should also create a marking guidance or marking scheme that goes with it. So நம்ம பேப்பரை செட் பண்ணிட்டு that you should not think that is it. You must also be in a position to simultaneously prepare a marking scheme. எதுக்கு தெரியுமா? Can anyone tell me why are creating a question paper? Of course, you know, it takes a lot of time. Can you just tell me why is that we are insisted to prepare a marking scheme?
Are we including all the concepts? We have to check with that marking scheme. We need to know which one is very important, which need to be insisted more. If I'm having a mensuration and probability, obviously mensuration takes a more part than probability. So by using the marking scheme, I can understand whether I took the questions properly from all the topics. Do I devise the marks particularly in that manner? I can check with that marking scheme first thing that I can do with that.
Okay, fine. Where edavadhu solla mudiyuma? Something else, somebody else? Aarthi ma'am, what's the purpose of asking us to prepare a marking scheme, Aarthi ma'am? Anybody can say for that matter. I am not specifying anybody. Ramya has given us
scoring at least mark other students to score. Adukkaga. So for formula, if we give the half mark, next for steps, so there they can get the marks. So that's I think, ma'am.
That's also a good idea. Formula ku mark kudukalam, apra idukku mark kudutena that the slow learners will be in a position to score. That's fine. Jayalakshmi ma'am.
And one more, ma'am, that we can identify that the child is good at in which topics, like that we can assess them.
Good idea.
Yes.
Okay. Actually, marking scheme.
Weightage of the marks, actually, we are giving that conceptual. Concept, we have to give the particular scheme of mark, weightage of mark. Even though marking scheme is given, then area of the chapter is we have divide already. So equally give the marking scheme only, pick the easiest one and the toughest one. Then hearts, that a median level of questions we have to pick from the given concept. What we have thought from the concept, we have create the questions. According to the questions, we have give the conceptual marks. Marking scheme is the particularly then even though we are creating the question, that questions that orderliness, we are giving the marks. So they, if they understand, if they,
that's a valid point.
yes,
இன்னொரு main reason marking scheme க்கு என்னன்னு கேட்டீங்கன்னா, it will give us a clear idea to find out if the question which is meant for 3 marks is actually deserves 3 marks. நீங்க ஒரு 2 மார்க் கொஸ்டினை வந்து 4 மார்க்கு கேட்க கூடாது, 4 மார்க் கொஸ்டினை 2 மார்க்கு கேட்க கூடாது. So நம்ம என்ன பண்ணலாம், when we are setting a paper simultaneously, if we start giving the marking scheme, we will come to know the number of steps. Depending on the number of steps, we can decide about the mark that can be allotted to that question. That is the purpose of marking scheme. இப்போ நான் பேப்பரை செட் பண்ணி முடிச்சிட்டேன், ஒரு 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 கொஸ்டின் பேப்பர் which has got 2 marks, 3 marks and 4 marks. அப்புறம் 4 மார்க் கொஸ்டின்ல வந்து 4 மார்க்குக்கு உரிய பாயிண்ட்ஸ் இல்லைன்னா, then the child will be making fun of us. You know, sometimes என்ன தெரியுமா, I don't know if you have children have told this or not. Sometimes இந்த வாட்டி போர்டு பேப்பரை பார்த்துட்டு வந்த உடனே, I don't know, they use such words which were really there in their language. சப்ப பேப்பர் மிஸ் இந்த பேப்பர் அப்படின்னு, சப்ப பேப்பர் மிஸ் இந்த பேப்பர். So what they meant was, அந்த பேப்பர்ல ஒண்ணுமே இல்ல, 2 மார்க் கொஸ்டின்ல 4 மார்க் கேட்டிருக்கான், 4 மார்க் கொஸ்டின் போய் 2 மார்க்ல கேட்டிருக்கான் மேம். அந்த மாதிரி அவன் கமெண்ட் அடிப்பான். கமெண்ட் அடிக்கிறதுக்கு அந்த மாதிரி நம்ம இடமே கொடுக்க கூடாது. We should never give way to it. So what we should do is, when you set a paper, simultaneously இங்க கொஸ்டின் கையில இருக்கும் போது நம்ம ஆன்சர் எழுத ஆரம்பிச்சிட்டோம்னா, we will come to know if that question actually is, I mean, if that question really deserves that mark. So என்ன ஆகும், 2 marks எழுதும் போது number of steps should not exceed more than half வச்சா கூட, 4 ஸ்டெப்புக்கு மேல அந்த கொஸ்டினுக்கு ஆன்சர்ஸ் இல்லாம நிறைய ஸ்டெப்ஸ் வந்துருச்சுன்னா, first thing is the child will not have find time to finish all 4 mark questions asked in 2 marks. Now the child will find it very difficult to complete the paper. As such, I don't know, I am very confident to say that a mathematics paper cannot be completed at least 15 minutes before the, or a good child will be able to complete a mathematics paper just 15 minutes before the paper is supposed to get binded. இது வந்து every time. இதுவே நீங்க வேற எந்த சப்ஜெக்ட பாத்தீங்கன்னா half an hourல பேப்பரை முடிச்சிட்டு he will put his head down and lie down. But mathematics paper அப்படி கிடையவே கிடையாது. 2 hours பேப்பர்னா 1.5 மணி நேரம் எழுதுவாங்க. Because எழுதணும், he has to write for 1.5 hours. If the paper is meant for 2 hours, the child should be given time to do checking only for 20 minutes. It cannot be more than 20 minutes. So how can that happen? That can happen only if we have a proper planning. A 4 mark question should be a 4 mark question. A 2 mark question should be for 2 marks only. So the number of steps நம்ம வந்து clear-ஆ identify பண்றதுக்கு simultaneously we have to prepare a marking scheme. That's the intention behind. At the same time, as we develop the question paper, we also create the marking guidance or marking scheme which goes with it. It cannot be just like that done. It has to go with it. That's very, very essential. So let us keep in mind, as and when we set a paper, we need to know the marking scheme. Marking scheme நம்மளுக்கு இல்லைனா, we won't understand if that question really deserves 4 marks or 3 marks or whatever it is. So it is very essential that as and when we set the paper, we need to go with a marking scheme. So let us keep this very, very important point in mind. When we set a paper, we need to have a marking scheme. Kindly have this in mind and let us proceed setting a paper keeping this in mind. So this is one thing which I wanted to tell you about. So the purpose of setting a marking scheme is to decide about what kind of mark can be allotted for a particular question. Now, what is the basic criteria to set a question paper? So we need to know certain things in our mind when we set a paper. What is that basic thing that we need to know when we set a paper? A question paper setter or an evaluator, you can say, should fulfill their assignments with great honesty, dedication, integrity. நம்ம கச்சா மச்சான்னு நம்ம பேப்பரை செட் பண்ணவே முடியாது. Our paper should be really of standard-ஆ இருக்கணும். Otherwise, I told you that there will be a huge comment from everywhere. You cannot have a very simple paper. You cannot definitely have a very tough paper. Already the children has developed lot of fear for mathematics. So it should be in such a way that we fulfill with dedication, honesty, integrity. That's how we all have been doing, and full seriousness. சும்மா ஒரு 10 பேருக்கு நடுவுல உட்காந்து நானும் ஒரு பேப்பரை செட் பண்ண நம்ம பண்ணணும்னா we ourselves will not have a satisfaction. So a question paper setter or an evaluator should fulfill their assignments with great honesty, dedication, integrity and seriousness. இதெல்லாம் எப்படி பண்ணணும்ன்றத we will see it as and when it comes. So before setting a paper, every paper setter should put himself or herself in the shoes of the examinee and then frame the type, level and duration of the questions. So you should put yourself in the place of the child. நம்மளுக்கு இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு பேப்பர் வந்தா நம்ம எப்படி அப்ரோச் பண்ணுவோம்? So put yourself in the shoes of the examinee, the children, and then frame the type, level and duration of the questions. So it's very essential that we dedicate a lot of time and prepare it with integrity and seriousness. That's more important. It's not like preparing a question paper just for the sake of it. Our paper should be just standard. Neither it should be easy nor it should be tough. It should be a standard paper. It cannot be a substandard paper. So we need to prepare paper with full dedication and seriousness. And what is a spade work? What is that we need to do before we start setting the paper? Ensure that the syllabus is completed. Without completing the syllabus, you cannot think of conducting an exam with that part of the portions. So ensure that the syllabus is completed, and also we will ensure that quality revision is done. Paper portion mudichonu solli udane or test conduct panna, it goes meaningless. It doesn't serve the purpose. So we will ensure that the syllabus is completed, and we need quality revision. We need to revise it. A maths teacher only is in a position to spend a lot of energy. It should be in a position to spend a lot of energy during revision. Nama class edukumbodhu kuda we will not become so tired. And the revision part varumbodhu, you cannot give the question to the child and tell them read. Panna mudiyuma nammala? Impossible. Nama subject la matramda and madri. We give the question, we tell them to do, and we work with them. If they are not able to do, ஏதோ நோட்ஸ் கொடுத்தோம், அந்த நோட்ஸ் உட்காந்து படின்ற சொல்ற சப்ஜெக்டே நம்ம சப்ஜெக்ட் கிடையாது. What do? We give them the question, we sit with them, we make them do, teach them if they do not know. So many things are there. So we need to have quality revision done before the child takes up the examination. And the pattern of question paper and weightage to be discussed with all the parallel teachers. Ramya madamum Jayalakshmi madamum parallel teachers ஆ இருந்தா கண்டிப்பா எவ்வளவு சப்ஜெக்ட் இருந்தாலும் அத்தனை சப்ஜெக்ட்ல எவ்வளவு எக்ஸாம்ஸ் இருந்தாலும் எவ்வளவு செக்ஷன்ஸ் இருந்தாலும் அத்தனை செக்ஷன்ல உள்ள parallel teachers ஒன்னா உட்கார்ந்து we have to discuss with the pattern of the paper, weightage, etc. so that no child is put in trouble. So pattern of question paper and weightage to be discussed with parallel teachers is very essential. You need not leak the question because that's highly confidential. But we can always think of sharing the pattern of the question paper and the weightage to be discussed with the parallel teachers. And there's something called a blueprint. I hope you would have heard of what is it. We will go into the depth of it. Blueprint to be prepared and submitted along with the paper to avoid repetition of questions. I should not have the same type of question in 2 mark and then continued in 3 mark and then in 4 marks, for which I need to prepare what is called a blueprint. So what is that we need to do to honestly prepare a blueprint? We will look into it. So the pattern of question paper and the weightage to be discussed with parallel teachers is essential. We need to first complete the syllabus, and we need to do quality revision for all the maths exams. And we also need to, when I mean revision, totally involving ourselves in the revision and not merely telling them, giving them the questions, do it. Yarali mathematics la pannave mudiyadu. And revision பண்ணும்போது, I know we never do the same question which has been worked out by us earlier. Somewhere at some point we introduce something new. Revision பண்ணும்போது ஒரு வாட்டியும் நம்ம we need to introduce something somewhere at some point. So the spade work that we know that we do as a preparatory activity before setting a paper is very, very essential so that our paper is not substandard and it is standard paper. Okay. So complete the syllabus, do enough revision, Pattern of paper and weightage should be discussed with the teachers, parallel teachers, and blueprint to be prepared and submitted along with the papers to avoid repetition of questions. There should be no repetition. என்னென்ன terms எங்கெங்க யூஸ் பண்ணணும்ன்றது கூட has to be very logical. சும்மா ஒரு questionல find இருக்கக்கூடாது. வெறும் evaluate இருக்கக்கூடாது. solveன்னு நிறைய இருக்கக்கூடாது. So we need to even be very careful in using the terms, terminology when you set a paper. It must have all the terms. Evaluate should be there, find is there, simplify should be there. Okay, analyze. Okay, so many, discuss, arrive at a solution. And mari compare. And mari all terms you use in a paper is supposed to be a paper which is really worth it. So what is that? So typography. Again, on the paper update, the way you put the font and all that is very, very important. Your font should not be very small. It should not be too big. It should be student friendly. So what do? We use only one font throughout. Or question update smaller or question bigger. We need to use the same font size throughout. So when I mean the same font size, I mean to say it can be preferably 14 inches. And then you need to have double spacing 1.5. நம்மளுக்கு இதெல்லாம் சிஸ்டம்ல எல்லாமே இருக்கு. அதெல்லாம் நம்ம செட் பண்ணிட்டாலே it automatically comes when you do the typography. So use only one font throughout, and the font size should be 14. Use only 1.5 as double spacing. Okay, leave sufficient space for the answers, diagrams, etc. If you're going to set the paper and ask the child to do in that same paper, give them sufficient space for the answers and diagrams. There should be no spelling mistakes in the question paper. It will be bringing down the standard, our standard would be reduced if you're going to make such errors. As a teacher, we have to maintain the dignity. The question paper, it will go to n number of people. DAV paper, mistake, spelling mistake, they will laugh. So we should never give way to it. Our language is very, very important. When we use the terms in the question, the language matters a lot. So we need to take care. There should be no spelling errors in the question paper. And pictures in the question paper should have been well-defined outlines. Vega light paper questions, it may not be highly appreciated. So you have to take care of all these points as far as the typography details are concerned. So the font size should be taken care, and same font should be maintained throughout. Double spacing to be given, leaving sufficient space for the answers if needed. There should be no spelling errors, and the pictures in this question paper should be well-defined outlines. Edhum breaking of lines the picture should be clearly drawn. It should not be having some sort of doubt raising. It should be clearly designed. So it is very essential that you draw the picture very clearly, giving them proper outlines. So this part has to be taken care. Now question paper should also be user friendly. User friendly enough, it should be student friendly. The person who is using is a student. So how? Quality and length of the question paper. நம்ம பாட்டுக்கு ஒரு 20 மார்க் क्वेश्चन செட் பண்றேன்னு சொல்லிட்டு அந்த 4 மார்க் எல்லாம் ஒரு 10 மார்க் क्वेश्चन மாதிரி 10 பாயிண்ட்ஸ் எதிர்பார்த்து பண்ணவே கூடாது. That's why I told you in the very beginning of the session, teachers, 4 மார்க் क्वेश्चन நீங்க 4 பாயிண்ட் எழுதுங்க போதும். 5 மார்க் क्वेश्चन ஒரு 5 பாயிண்ட் எழுதுங்க போதும். That part has to be taken care when you give them the questions. Keep the time in mind while setting the paper. The child should be able to finish 2 hours paper na 1 hour 40 minutes na mudichidum. And the madri, if the paper is going to be for 1 hour, the child should be able to finish it in 40 minutes, maximum 45 minutes. And the 15 minutes he has to utilize for checking. So keep the time in mind while setting the question paper. Then set the paper in such a way that the average students can attempt the paper effortlessly. எப்போதுமே பேப்பரை செட் பண்ணும்போது அப்படியே ஹை லெவல்ல क्वेश्चंस கொண்டு வந்தோம்னா the average and below average students will find it very difficult to compete with the others. So when we set the paper, you should set it in such a way that the average students can attempt the paper average. Don't bother about below average, don't bother about above average. An average child should be in a position to make an attempt of the paper without putting much of effort. Effortlessly, the child should be able to perform well. And then let the paper should neither be too difficult nor too easy for the students to answer. That we all know. Let the language be child friendly. There should not be a language hindrance. Let the language be child friendly. A Marathi student must have the question written in Marathi. Of course, it should be written in English. So let the paper which is going to be set be in such a way that the language is not a barrier. Language should be child friendly. Most questions could be open-ended and variety of answers can be expected from the students. One question for a particular answer concept. Let us have many number of answers. The approach should be in many number of ways. Ultimately, the answer is the same, but the way you approach the answers can be in many number of ways. So the language, let the language be child friendly. That paper should neither be too difficult nor too easy for the students to answer. Set the paper in such a way that the average students can attempt the papers effortlessly. And most questions should be open-ended and a variety of answers can be expected from the students. Question papers should provide opportunities to the students to utilize their competence rather than content knowledge. It should not be something like the question paper should be in such a way that we are in a position to have the content knowledge. Chumma, there is no point in giving questions for the sake of it. It should provide opportunities to the students to utilize their competence rather than their content knowledge. So content knowledge, the way that content is being applied or the way that content is being conveyed should be open-minded. The question paper should provide opportunities to students to utilize their competence rather than content knowledge. It is not only a question of content knowledge, it should also be very competent based. It should be like that. Finally, marks allotted for each question should not be shown in the question paper. Generally, we give the marks. Otherwise, in mathematics, of course, marks but elaborate questions, 4 marks, it has to be given, the weightage of mark has to be mentioned. Accordingly, they will decide about the number of points. As in mathematics, steps, if you're going to arrive at the answers, you needn't have to bother about the number of steps. That's why it said, marks allotted for each question should not be shown in the question paper. We need not necessarily show the marks. We can just tell them to go approach the answer in the way it is possible. Okay. So that is what I mean by saying the user friendliness of the question paper. Now, what is the criteria for a good paper? All the items should be shown to the parallel teachers and not just the type of question paper. Don't tell them I am having the questions for 2 marks for this many, 3 marks, this many, 4 marks, this many. You should also be in a position to give some sort of this thing to the children. I'm sorry, it has jumped to some other. So marks allotted for questions should not be shown in the question paper. If you show the marks allotted, also it's not wrong. It need not be shown also, because whether you write the steps or not, you will know. If you don't follow the sequence of steps, it's not possible for us to allot marks. So don't worry about the marks. If you show also, it's okay. If you don't show also, that's not a big deal. Okay. Next, the criteria. Now, as I told you, question paper should be user friendly, but otherwise, the criteria, what is criteria for the good question paper? All the items that is test should be shown to the parallel teachers and not just the type of the question paper as we discussed earlier. Lesson-wise blueprint should be prepared and submitted along with the question paper to avoid repetition of questions and testing of all areas. So as somebody suggested, it should have all areas covered. It should have all areas covered so that we don't miss any content. So the question paper should have all the areas covered. So whether if it's going to be involving perimeter, perimeter should be there. If it is going to involve area, area should be there. If it is going to be involving cost, cost should be there. So all the criteria should be tested. So all the items should be shown to the parallel teachers and not just a type of paper. A lesson-wise blueprint has to be prepared and submitted along with the question paper to avoid repetition. Now, what is this blueprint? We will see. Blueprint is nothing but a matrix or a chart reporting the number and the type of questions. Maybe I must be in a position to say that this is the type of question represented across the topic in content, inconsistent with the learning objectives and relative weight. So I am proposing this part only to tell you that the purpose of blueprint is just to make you all understand about the content. So it's this, the matrix or a chart reporting the number and the type of questions to be tested, represented across the topics in content, consistent with learning objectives and relative weight on the test given to each topic. So it will say what it is. It would particularly say what it is. Now, what is a blueprint? Blueprint acts as a guide, okay, in construction of question paper. So what will it contain? I hope all of you have seen the blueprint. How do you prepare a blueprint, teachers? Can anyone tell me? How do you generally prepare a blueprint?
Usually, first I'll prepare the weightages of units, ma'am. Then, so if I'm preparing 1 mark, 3 mark, 5 mark, no, then for that's where I'll prepare unit wise, and then say part A, part B, part C, like that, ma'am.
Okay. So, ipa nama enna pandrom? So we first type. Yes, ma'am. Jayalakshmi, ma'am, please tell me, ma'am.
It is not only on the unit wise, and also one more that is based on the level of understanding. Like it is for easy, difficult, and the
Perfect.
moderate question papers.
Perfect, ma'am. Perfect.
Has to be taken, ma'am. And one more thing also, it will be based on like according to the Bloom's taxonomy, we would have learned that knowledge-based questions, understanding-based questions, and application-oriented, and also the skill-based questions are there.
Good.
In that based, we have to set a question paper.
Good, ma. Good. That's fine. So, what is the purpose of the blueprint? It acts as a guide in construction of question paper, links assessment to learning objectives. We should be in a position to achieve the objectives behind the paper. We should be if you are taking a topic, arithmetic progression, what is the goal that we need to achieve in arithmetic progression? The child should be able to understand what is an AP and find out the terms if it is an AP, find out the sum of the terms if it is an AP. This is goal. It links assessments to learning objectives. Yella test factor, yella concept, question paper to the extent possible, nammalaala include panna mudiyuma அப்படின்றதுக்கு இந்த blueprint. As ma'am said, Jayalakshmi ma'am said, it should be understanding the level of the question also. 1 2 mark can be an easy question. 1 3 mark can be slightly of understanding type. 2 mark can be recognizing and recollecting and writing. 1 mark can be recollecting and writing. 2 marks can be slightly applying what they have recollected. 3 marks could be doing some calculations. 4 marks could be inferring from the calculations some result. And the madri and the level analyze it's very essential to have a blueprint and helps to match various competencies with the course content and the appropriate modality of assessment. So it will also help us to match, as she said, easy level, tough level. And it also helps the teachers in designing the instructional strategies as per the guidelines expected in the curriculum. Curriculum says, ma'am, Vijayalakshmi ma'am had taken one topic called learning objectives, learning outcomes. Adila, she said, what outcome we need to get from the children can be obtained if we prepare a blueprint and then start designing a paper. Namludia achievement will be completely as per the curriculum satisfied if we are going to prepare a blueprint and then start setting a paper. So the blueprint, the purpose of blueprint, it is just to act as a guide in construction, links assessments, helps to match various competencies, helps the teacher in designing the instructional strategies as expected in the curriculum. So idella mind la vechinu, if you are going to set a paper, it will help us to see to it that we achieve what we need. That's the purpose of this blueprint. Okay, fine. How to prepare? Purpose of blueprint, as I told you, the purpose of constructing examination using a blueprint is to provide conceptual map of examination format and content area represented, and it's widely used assessment tool that provides list of information about the type of measurement tools and proportion of each question, format in assessment as easy, medium, average, below average, hot question, and the madri. Type and level of training for each topic and the relevant learning objectives. So to check if we have achieved the objectives that we are supposed to, this blueprint is going to help us. Okay, without this, it's not going to serve the purpose of doing it. It's okay. Important aspects. So before you write pages full of detailed questions, you will need to remember to follow these tips to build effective survey questions. That is, you use simple direct language. Let us not be very complicated. Enna porthavarla word problem pathana down, finished. So on the word problem, if you're going to use simple language which the child will be able to understand, our result is going to be fruitful. So be very specific about what you want from the question. So use simple direct language. Be specific about what you want. Break down big ideas into multiple questions. Other than they have introduced what's called case study. ஒரு பெரிய word problem கொடுக்காம ஒரு incident கொடுத்துட்டு breaking down into multiple number of questions to achieve our objectives. So break down big ideas into multiple questions. Avoid leading questions. Leading questions, not that question which leads to a lot of complications. Ask one thing per question. Don't have too many questions. Subdivision out. I don't know. This is my experience. Have you realized, teachers? ஒரு question எடுத்துட்டு அந்த subdivision கேட்டீங்கன்னா 4 subdivision இருந்தா sometimes the child fails to write all the subdivisions. We will be able to see hardly to, not all, at least many, they tend to miss. So ask one thing per question. What you want to achieve should be just one per question. Use more interval questions. Interval questions, something like the child must be able to understand that there should be some proper relation between what is posed in the previous subdivision and in the next. So as far as possible, we will try to avoid many subdivisions in the question. Ask one thing per question and use more interval questions. What's your experience, teachers? Enna porthavarla subdivision questions irundale I tend to see children unnecessarily missing. Of course, it is a skill to understand and do, but they tend to miss. What do you feel? What is your experience about it? Can you tell me? Ennuடைய point I am telling. What do you teachers feel?
Yeah, ma'am. While asking subdivision questions, what you said is I completely agree with that. But one more point is there is, for example, for 40-second question, I mean a 20-second question. I'm having two subdivision and 23rd question. For below average kids, just imagine it's a 4-mark question. In the 20-second question, if I'm asking 2 subdivision, they find one among the subdivision easy. So they will write that only one question, the 2 marks. Then the next 4 mark they won't attend. So while coming to that average kids, while asking subdivision, they might think or whole question கேட்டா மொத்தமா skip பண்ணிடுவோம். இந்த சப்டிவிஷன்ல வரும்போது ஏதோ ஒரு क्वेश्चन நமக்கு தெரிஞ்சதா இருக்கும், we can attempt minimally. While coming to average and above average, they feel very much stressed. ரெண்டு சப்டிவிஷன்ல ஒண்ணு தெரியல என்னால
it has got its own advantage, it has got its own disadvantage. ஆனா நம்ம வந்து ரொம்ப நிறைய கொடுத்துட்டாலும் they tend to missன்றதுனால கொஞ்சம் கேர்ஃபுல்லா இருக்கும்.
We have to be very careful with that.
ஒரு பெரிய क्वेश्चन 4 மார்க் கொடுக்கிறதுக்கு இப்ப நம்ம கேஸ் ஸ்டடில கொடுத்திருக்காங்க பாருங்க, it's really an advantage to children. இப்ப கேஸ் ஸ்டடில they are giving 4 mark questions. They are not giving entire 4 mark for the thing. What they do is they reduce it to 2 marks, 1 mark அப்படின்னு சொல்லி reduce பண்ணிட்டு So what they do is they don't give the entire 4 mark to one question. Instead, அதை break பண்ணிடுறாங்க. Break பண்ணிட்டு they say this question for 2 marks. அதுல suppose இந்த 2 questionல ஏதோ ஒன்னு தெரிஞ்சா கூட the child is benefited with 2 marks. But at the same time, there are some children who don't look into the subdivision and they tend to miss marks. So நம்ம கொஞ்சம் it has got its own advantage and disadvantage. Again, we need to train the children to see to it that they don't miss out anything. Otherwise, I think it should be so ask one thing per question and use more interval questions. அதுதான் நம்ம மீன் பண்றோம். We need to have. So என்ன பண்ணனும்னா ஒரு பேப்பரை செட் பண்றது அவ்வளவு ஈஸியே இல்ல. Everybody says set a paper and they give 2 days time na. We cannot set a standard paper in 2 days time. Nobody understands our difficulty. They will say I need a paper for 25 marks. I need a paper for 40 marks. And it அதை விட எங்களுக்கு கொடுமை என்னன்னா it is a paper which is common. So common paper என்கிட்ட சொன்னானா I must be in a position to not only satisfy my own students, I must be in a position to satisfy the mindset of many other parallel teachers and their students. Obviously, the amount of pain, the amount of pressure that is put on me is very high. Appo I must be in a position, I'm answerable to many. It's not my own students. My language is known to my own students. But when it's going to be a common paper, that language which I'm framing should satisfy the mindset of many other types of children whom I wouldn't have met at all. Appo, we need to follow all these constraints. Be very simple, be specific, break down big ideas into multiple questions, ask one question, one thing per question, and use more interval questions. இதெல்லாம் நம்ம மைண்ட்ல வச்சுட்டு கொஞ்சம் பேப்பர் பண்ணனா to some level we are not questioned by anybody. எங்களுடைய ஸ்கூல்ல எப்படின்னா எங்க டிஏவி ஸ்கூல்ல வந்து ஒரு பேப்பரை செட் பண்ணோம்னா அந்த பேப்பரை அனலைஸ் பண்றதுக்கு nearly 10 of us are there. I don't know, hereafter you teachers also will be coming into that group because it's all going to be a common paper. So we will be meeting you all. So appa na vandu I must be in a position to make my colleagues happy with the paper. They should not comment saying that my children found it difficult. I must be in a position to make all the teachers happy and so that their children are not affected. If any teacher is not happy, then they would express their views. Of course, all of us are very friendly, but still அந்த ஒரு சைல்டு பாயிண்ட் ஆஃப் வியூல வந்து ஒரு பேரண்ட் வந்து இல்ல என்னுடைய பையன் வந்து இந்த பேப்பர்ல ரொம்ப டஃப்னு ஃபீல் பண்ணா அப்படின்னு ஏதோ ஒரு கமெண்ட் கொடுத்து we will obviously feel very bad. So we should never give way to it and we should see to it that we are in a position to do justice to that job. Okay. 1 minute, teachers. Is my screen visible, teachers?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
so let us keep all this in mind when we have to set a paper. Now, next, I hope I'm not boring you teachers. I don't know. I am trying to tell what I'm conveying. I wish
No,
I'm
ma'am.
not boring you.
No, no, ma'am. No, ma'am.
ரம்யா, நீங்க என்னைக்கு எங்களை போரிங்னு சொல்ல போறீங்கன்னு தெரியல. எப்போதுமே நோ தான் சொல்றீங்க. But I don't know if we are really doing justice, if we are what we know we are trying to tell you.
Ma'am, no one knows everything. No one knows nothing, ma'am. Each and every session we are learning something new, ma'am. Even though
And
we
I
are-
know everybody is aware of it. I'm only trying to get it. That's why I'm asking you teachers, please tell
Yeah,
us.
ma'am, yeah, ma'am.
சொல்லுங்க என்ன உங்க மைண்ட்ல என்ன இருக்குன்னு. Let me also try to
Yeah,
understand.
ma'am. For this subdivision question itself, I had some different thought. Now I express. After listening to you, okay, this kind of problems also some kids are facing. So I'm coming up with some different idea, and in future we can fuse that idea.
இல்லம்மா, it has got its own idea, advantage and disadvantage தான் என்னுடைய பாயிண்ட். அட்வான்டேஜ் என்னன்னா ஒரு கொஸ்டின் மிஸ் பண்ணாலும் ஆன்சர் தெரியலனாலும் இன்னொரு கொஸ்டின் the child will be able to answer. Disadvantage என்னன்னா they may tend to miss. So it again depends on the capability of a child. Let us try to train them in all ways. அவ்வளவுதான். Because board has introduced what is called a case study, which is going to be having 2 subdivisions. அப்படின்னா we need to do justice to that. அவ்வளவுதான். அந்த மாதிரி தான் நம்ம வந்து பண்ண முடியும். There is no other way of finding out and there is no other means, the means of which we can say something about all the subdivision questions. Anyways, so what are the essential characteristics of a good paper? It should be relevant. A good question is relevant. It should be a question is framed with clear, easily understandable, without any vagueness. ஏதாவது ஒரு tough word அதுக்குள்ள introduce பண்ணி விட்டோம்னா பாவம் பசங்க. So it should be very clear. It should be concise. It should be purposeful. Children are children. நம்மள வந்து you should keep ourselves into the shoes of the examinee. அதுதான் நான் முதல்லயே சொன்னேன். நம்ம பேப்பர் செட் பண்ணோம்னா நம்ம ஒரு ஸ்டூடெண்டா இருந்தா நம்ம எப்படி அதை ஆன்சர் பண்ணுவோம் அப்படின்னு நம்ம யோசிச்சுட்டு we have to answer. So we should keep ourselves in the shoes of an examinee and we should decide about how to set a paper. So a question is framed in a very clear, easily understandable language. It should be concise. It should be purposeful. It should serve the purpose. Guiding but not leading. It should be guiding the child to know it. Stimulates thinking. It should give a lot of thinking and it should be single dimensional. Multiple avanga thought pora madri we should not have a paper. It should be single dimensional. So let us put so much of ideas in our mind before we set a paper. So நிறைய விஷயங்கள் வேணும். பேப்பர் செட்டிங்லாம் அவ்வளவு ஈஸி இல்லைன்றது all of us know. So good paper setting, focus, as I told, one item in each question. Keep it natural. Phrase questions in your own ways. Natural phrase. ரொம்ப complicated words எல்லாம் let us use natural phrase. Only ask relevant questions. சும்மா irrelevant questions கேட்க வேணாம். Add positive feedbacks for correct and incorrect answers. So the feedback that the child gives should also be positive. Try to keep question text as short as possible. So the question that you keep the text means on the font size, as I told you, all that has to be taken care. See to it that the text is as short as possible. Create questions that require thought. சும்மா நம்ம வந்து அப்படியே யோசிச்சு எழுதாம டைரக்டா மைண்ட்ல இருக்கிறத அப்படியே ரீகலெக்ட் பண்ணி ரெகக்னைஸ் பண்ணி எழுதுற மாதிரி இல்லாம create questions that requires real thought. Thoughtனா it should be allowing the child to 1 minute wait, think about and then come with the answer. Let us not directly give the answer. And then நம்ம இப்போ MCQ இருந்தது இல்லையா, MCQல what did we do? We just gave them some questions. They have started answering out of the 4 let us not do that. Uma Daneshwari ma'am, if you can please mute, we'll be very thankful, ma'am. Please mute, ma'am. Yes, thank you, ma'am. So we have to create questions that require thought and let the text or the phrase that we use be very simple, and let us add positive feedbacks for correct and incorrect answers. Okay, now I'm going to tell about the various phrases we need to use. நம்ம பேப்பர்ல வந்து when we set a paper, it should have so many phrases which is going to be really distinct and different. இப்ப வந்து நான் knowledge levelல question, knowledge levelனா just recalling, knowledgeனா என்னது, recalling and recognition. So ஒரு knowledge levelல ஒரு பேப்பரை செட் பண்ணணும்னா the phrases should be something like define, identify, label, match, name. ஒரு congruence of 2 triangles, name the matching parts. இது knowledge level question. என்னதான் சொன்னல blueprintல எப்படி இருக்கணும், knowledge, understanding, application. 3 இருக்கு. நம்ம B.Ed-ல எல்லாம் படிச்சிருக்கோம். Purpose of B.Ed is itself to make us all very good teachers. So என்ன பண்ணுவோம், we used to classify the paper as knowledge, understanding and application. So the knowledgeல வந்து என்னென்ன அந்த question terms என்னென்ன இருக்கணும், phrases என்னென்ன இருக்கணும், சும்மா அவன் யோசிச்சு எழுதுற மாதிரி define, identify, label, match, name. ஒரு similarity இருந்ததுன்னா, 2 triangles similar-ஆ இருந்ததுன்னா which side is proportional to one, which side of one triangle is proportional to the side of another triangle. அந்த மாதிரி identify பண்ணி எழுதுறது. Or naming the triangles, which are the 2 triangles which are similar னு சொல்லி ஒரு நிறைய triangles கொடுத்தனா identifying. And then selecting, stating, recognizing, listing, இந்த மாதிரி words எல்லாம் இருந்ததுன்னா those can be the phrases which can be used for questions which are going to be knowledge based. Say for example, இப்ப knowledge based-ல let us try to give some questions. Knowledge based-ல எப்படி கொடுக்கலாம், we can say state BPT, we can say state midpoint theorem. இது வந்து knowledge based questions. It can be for 2 marks, it can be for 1 mark, that depends on the depth of the question. Or identify the identity which is used in doing the expansion. 2x minus 5y the whole squared. Which identity is used over here to make an expansion? A minus b the whole squared. So these are knowledge based questions. Or in geometry part la poningna, name the conditions needed to find an unknown. Nariya or picture kudupom, we used to identify, we used to mark on x somewhere unknown angle. Appa the child should be in a position to name the condition which is required. Nama ASP use pandroma, Pythagoras use pandroma. Abindra and the concept kondu varradhukku you frame questions like select state, recognize, reorganize, identify, define. In a way, we are trying to find out the thing which is needed in framing the questions. So we need to identify the various contents that are needed in framing a paper. Okay. So maybe we can use all these phrases when we want to identify the questions. Fine. Now next we will come to the phrases that are needed. I will send it to all teachers. You needn't have to make a note of it. I'm sending the PPT to you. You can use it for your preparations. So the need now next coming to the application level. The application level it should be problem solving type. Compute and the calculate panni edukradhu. Demonstrate, modify, change, find, calculate. Namalukku da ella use panna mudiyum. Prepare, solve, show, establish, apply. Idella vandu application level. Every questions every varala application level la maybe something like calculate the area of the triangle, compute the perimeter, calculate the perimeter, or we can say prepare a grouped frequency distribution table. Okay, preparation and prepare. Nama vandu or sorted or table kuduttu prepare a grouped frequency distribution table. Or we can say solve the following pair of linear equations. All these are going to be application based. Show that LHS is equal to RHS, trigonometry identities. Show that LHS is equal to RHS. So these are the questions which are used for the application level. So nama paper set pannambodhu, if we use all these phrases keeping in mind, if not everything, at least certain things for the application based questions, it will be very, very interesting. And the paper will also be very, very looking as a standard paper. Mani, please close the door, Mani. Mani, excuse me, teachers, close the door. That's enough. Thank you, ma. So it should be like the paper should be having all these terminologies to see to it that the paper is standard. So அது மாதிரி இருந்ததுனாலும் நம்மளுடைய பேப்பர் பார்க்கிறதுக்கு நல்லா இருக்கும். சும்மா throughout the paper, I know you teachers must have also recognized. சும்மா ஒரே ஃபைண்டா இருக்க கூடாது. It should not be compute always. It should not be solve always. It should not be change. It should not be find. அதே மாதிரி இல்லாம different phrases நம்ம கொண்டு வந்துட்டோம்னா it will be very easy for the children and the paper will also look very nice. நம்ம பேப்பர் வந்து நிறைய இடத்துக்கு போவோம். நம்ம ஸ்கூல்ல இருந்து our paper might go to another one school. The teacher will understand the standard of us when only by looking at those papers. So we have to be very careful in using the phrases. Next one, the list of understanding level. Understanding level, the phrases that we could be using would be define. It may not be applicable to all the subjects. நம்மளுக்கு டிஃபைன்ன்றது ஒண்ணு கிடையவே கிடையாது. நம்மளுக்கு வந்து கிளாசிஃபை வரலாம், இல்ல ரெப்ரசன்ட் வரலாம் கிராஃபிக்கலி. These all are some terminologies for all the subjects. But what is suitable for us, we have to pick up from this. Discriminate வரலாம், நமக்கு construct வரலாம், நமக்கு compare வரலாம், convert kilometer per hour into meters per second, conversion வரலாம், அப்புறம் வந்து verify நம்மளுக்கு வரலாம். Okay, and then estimate, represent graphically. இதெல்லாம் understanding தான். What we do is we try to use different terminologies in the paper to see to it that we are achieving our objectives in the most efficient way. So everything may not be applicable to all the subjects. And the computer word may not be applicable for a language paper. So it is obviously understood that it is meant for a mathematics paper. Calculate is not applicable for any paper other than mathematics. So these terminologies are given in general, which has to be picked up from us by us to find out what is what. நம்மளுக்கு எது வேணும்ன்றத நம்ம வந்து இந்த compiling we have to get it done. So we need to be very specific in finding out the terminologies that is essential for us. So that is how we do. So what is more important in setting the paper is to know the phrases that are required. So So we will choose the phrases depending on what is needed. Fine. So so the terminologies that is needed has got to be clarified. I mean, be very carefully used when we set a paper. Okay, fine. Now coming to the next part of it. Okay, finally coming to the question, thinking capacities. Adula vandu konja phrases. What are the phrases? Say maybe thinking level, we need to really be in a position to have questions which would be thought provoking. So again, the words and phrases that we use should all be having something which is designed to think and answer. Chuma apdiye recollect and answer. It should be meant for 3 marks or 4 marks. So adukku vandu differentiate, illustrate, derive, reconstruct, or you can even say criticize, justify. Justify in the word will be most apt word for, because it gives lot of thinking. So in the madri or idu varumbodha we need to understand, justify the construction the question la namakku varum paru. The justification appo enna pannuvom nama, we used to have questions like this. Construct a pair of tangents, justify your from a point outside, lying outside the circle, justify your answer. So obviously the mindset of the child will have to be going for a thought process. He should understand that we need to bring in the concept of Pythagoras theorem to find out if what we have done or what we have got obtained is correct. So in the madri words the madri terminologies use panna arambikumbodhu, the child will also be allowed to think for some time to arrive at a conclusion and then give the answers. So thought provoking questions would be possible with such terminologies, and we will use such terminologies to justify, justify, predict, criticize, comment, categorize, design, and the madri nariya questions. Derive. Derivation cannot be done without an understanding. AN of an AP ki derivation irukku, SN ku or derivation irukku. We need to know the derivation part. Let us not, I know we don't do it. Let us not make the child take it just like that. Let the child understand that they need to derive. So and the madriyana thought provoking questions we need to use such phrases. Okay, so that is what I felt is going to make the paper also standard. Finally, we need to keep weightage in our mind. Weightage plays a major role. When we want to set a paper, it should be knowledge based for 10 marks if the paper is going to be for 25 marks, understanding level for 5 marks, application level for 5 marks, and skill testing should be 5 marks. So in all, the paper should be in a position to satisfy every child's mind. Or below average child ku nammala answer pandradhukku capabilities irukno. Mediocre child should also be able to answer, and the child who is above average also should be in a position to answer. And the madriyana weightage has to be prepared when a paper is going to be set. So 40% knowledge, 20% will be understanding level. Again, 20% will be an application level, and the final 20% will be the skill-based questions. So when we set the paper also, rumba high standard of pogama, rumba low avum povama, below average students, and above average students mindset satisfy pandra madri we need to frame questions, and it's very important that we frame the level in such a way that it doesn't obstruct the mind of any child. So knowledge level, understanding level, application based questions, and testing the skill of a child has to be taken care whenever we set such papers. So let's keep all these things in our mind when we have to prepare a quality paper. So the degree of difficulty of question paper, average students 50% question, good students 20% question, intelligent students 30% questions. இப்படிதான் இருக்கணும் paper. If we are not going to follow these norms, it is going to be boring. An intelligent child will feel very bored if the paper is very simple, and an average child will be put into a lot of stress if you are not going to give the question which is meant for the average child. So 50% of the questions would be for average student. Then a good student must be in a position to answer another 20%, which will go up to 70%. And an intelligent student must be able to answer to a higher level, which is going to be 30%. So standard question paper should have the degree of difficulty of question paper this way. And if we are going to maintain such norms in our mind when we set the paper, effectively the paper would be standard and the children also will be happy with the paper. It would satisfy the mindset of each and every child who is going to take up the exam. So, and the areas to cover should be something like this: must to know 80%, desirable to know 20%, nice to know, let it be nil. Nice to know, we should not put it in the question paper, but let us raise it in the classroom. நம்ம வந்து கொஸ்டின் பேப்பர்ல வந்து நம்மளுடைய டேலண்ட் எல்லாம் காமிச்சிட்டு you set all question paper which a child may not be able to think at all, then it is not fair on our part. But let us give such type of questions in the class. Pose it in the class, but not in the question paper. So, must to know 80% questions, it should be satisfying. Desirable to know 20% of the questions. Nice to know is very good, let them know, but don't put it in the question paper. Let us discuss it with the children in the class. So that is how I thought. So finally, I'm concluding saying that no repetition of question within a question paper and from a test paper to a test paper. Let us not copy question from one test paper to another test paper. Let us frame the questions on our own. Copying it from some other booklet into the thing is not fair. It is unfair. No repetition of questions within a question paper and from test paper to test paper. The areas tested can be the same, but the question must be framed differently. Next, if questions from the previous year question papers are being sourced, they need to be reframed. That's what I told you. Copy it, reframe the question and put it suitably. And then no marks should be reflected on the paper or informed to children. Let us not say this is for 2 marks, this is for 3 marks, this is for 4 marks. Announcement pressure on the mathematics reason invariably, if we are writing the steps for the allotment of marks, we know that there is no need for us to tell the child that this is 2 marks and this is 3 marks. It is needed only when it is going to be a language paper or something. 100 lines, 5 marks. Language paper. Let us make the child very free to understand the different source of approaching the answer. There is no hard and fast rule that this is the method. So we will not tell them anything. And marking scheme should be balanced. It should be in a way that it is satisfying the level of question as well as the marks allotted for the questions. Typography and the format should be student friendly, and language used should also be child friendly. So with all these norms in mind, if you're going to set a paper, we are also going to be happy and the children also will be happy. Finally, pre-examination precaution, avoid post-examination chaos. Let us not get tensed after the exam after setting a tough paper. Let us take precautions to see that the examination is conducted very smoothly. So take pre-examination precautions when you set the paper to avoid post-examination chaos. Let us not feel bad later when somebody comments that the paper is not good. For that, we will take necessary precautions to see to it that we achieve our objectives in the best way. Thank you, teachers. This is what I want to convey about framing of questions and the amount of precautions that we need to take when we set a paper.